Hey guys, in this video I want to implement a few features. So I think when I think of software, there are the kinds of software that allows you to implement features and the kind of software that doesn't. And let's say if you can't, you've got thin software. And if you can, you've got thick software. You've got software that's sort of powerful enough to build features yourself. And that means you're not in this position where you're like, oh, I wish Giraffe 6 or Giraffe 2026 will do the grid tool or whatever it is, because you can build your own. Rhino, Rhino Grasshopper is fully thick, as in you can, whatever you want to do, if you want a section tool, you can implement a section tool, because the raw ingredients that the McNeil gives you with Grasshopper and the Rhino Common and the SDK and Python and all of that stuff gives you the tools to build your own features. And when I was a practicing architect, I would just build them, right? If we needed a certain way of organizing data or writing geometry into a particular format, you just do it using the code. And so you're never stuck. It's a very happy place to be. It sucks being stuck. And so we've tried to build giraffes that it's very implementable. And so what do I actually mean by that? So let's say we're designing a museum. Now, the first thing is we may get some program from the museum itself. And also we need 4 exhibition spaces and, 2 halls and some toilets, etc. Now, the first feature I'm going to implement in this is a program tracker. We'll just do this in analytics. So I'm going to start with a blank slate, and it's going to be called the program tracker. And I'm going to create that. And I'm going to do 2 layers. I'm going to do a drawing layer, and this one's called program. Right, there it is. It's empty, and here's default. And we better do some usages. So usages is moved over here, and everything's resizable. So let's we're going to go from a menu. We don't want to use the residential usage as the basis because it has all this dwelling mix stuff, which is silly. So we've got amenity already, and the floor to floor is set at 4. So that's good. So I'm going to clone this, and this will be exhibition. And we'll make that let's say this is a museum in pinks, in fuchsias and pinks and violets. And then we'll say large exhibition. Okay, and it's going to be like a stronger sort of, yeah, all right. And then we'll do ticketing. And lobby, and that can be like a bit. All right, so those are our uses: ticketing, exhibition, ticketing, blah blah. So let's close this now, and let's move all of these guys onto the program layer. And now let's draw the program. So we've got 2 large exhibition, 4 exhibition. Let's say we've got this much lobby, and then some amenity. Okay. So in the usage, so these are all going to be exhibition. And apologies, we've got some, I'm on the dev branch, so there are some UI issues. Large exhibition, okay, and that color is not quite different enough. So obviously in Giraffe, you can always do this and change that color, hit save. Okay, oh, so I've made this large exhibition, my apologies. I was like, exhibition. There we go. And there's ticketing. And there was amenities. All right, so you can see how this works, right? So we've got 2 large exhibition, and this is just the program, right? And it's not smart. It's just a way of taking it. You could, build a little feature that took an Excel and dump these rectangles out, no problem. But let's just add a track, which is going to be just the areas in square meters. And we're just literally going to go for the area. Should we go net or gross? Let's just go gross and return it. Okay, and save. Oh, well. And we're going to group by layer. So in the program, we've got this total thing. And I think we can do this. Bang. All right, so if we click that, it goes by usage. And so these are the program areas. And so maybe let's call that program areas. Now it's program areas. All right. And if we didn't really love this, we could actually go, we could say, let's say exhibition area, and then filter to where the usage is exhibition, right? And then build those line out by ourselves, but we don't need to. We're just going to use this for now. It's good enough for us. But again, if we wanted to, we could, because you can implement the kind of features you need in Giraffe. And sometimes it's a bit, of a pain in the bum to do it, but often it's not. Often it's quite simple. Okay, let's say one of our large exhibition needs to be quite big. All right, so our large exhibition's increasing. Okay, so that's the program areas, and I'm just going to turn those off now, but they're still there. They're just here. And you can easily turn this into an arrangement diagram as well, because we could say, in our annotation, we can say, like, this is going to be we can't enter off the freeway, can we? So why don't we enter off this is where we're going to come into this museum, and obviously we're going to come into amenity, and then off amenity, there's going to have to be the toilets. Sorry, off tickets is going to be the toilets, and then we say, normally there's the traveling exhibition, so it's just there, so the school groups can come and see the amazing. Then there's the large exhibition, and traveling and large exhibition need like good access to the dock, and then there's the more standard exhibition halls all around here. Let's say something like this, right? A crash course in museum planning by someone who has only done it once or twice. All right, and there'll be a back of house somewhere. Let's actually add a back of house. This is how cool it is. So just make sure I'm on program areas, and we'll add back of house, and we better add that as a usage. So I'll go to amenity and clone that, and I'll just call it BOH and make it gray. Save. All right, and then we better do this BOH. Okay, so we got our back of house 2. All right, and you can see that's been added. So that's our target area of back of house. And if we needed that to be precise, like let's say it has to be 40 by 20, and I hit 20 minus, and then I use snap. So then I'm getting this, so that's 800. There it's 800. That seems too small, so I'll just duplicate it. Okay, so 2 back of houses at 1600. All right, and now we'll go to default and actually start planning. Okay, excuse me. All right, now the next feature we really want is snap to the grid, okay, which is something we have now. So if I just draw in Giraffe, you can see that snapping. But this grid is wrong. All right, so as in it's straight up and down. Now we can solve that by going to snap and grid and editing the grid and say we are going to go in this particular direction, and our grid is going to be a 5-meter grid, and doing that. And then if I hit the G button, you can see there's my 5-meter grid, and I can do one better. I can go to snap and grid and I can say align 2D to grid. So there we go. So now it's 2D. And now if I draw and I hold down S, I can draw on my 5-meter grid. And exhibition. So now I'm drawing on grid. And by the way, let's change this from default to option 1. And here I'm just visually inspecting. So I've got 1367.25 square meters of program area, but option 1 only has 225. I'm going to get rid of that decimal point. There's a precision thing here. Oh, boom, that's way nicer. And now I've got this thing, so as I do this more and more, you can see it's going up and up, and I can sort of just visually determine whether I'm hitting my program. It's pretty cool. And if I add an option 2, there'll be another column. So we're getting Giraffe to do what we want it to do. There's people that are using Giraffe that have never planned or will never consider planning museums, or even tracking program like briefed area versus actual area. But they can get Giraffe to do what they want to do, and we're getting Giraffe to do what we want to do. And I'm leaving these little green blobby trees from Mapbox all around because they're just, they're so good. Okay. So we've aligned the grid, and if I copy this, you'll notice that we actually have snap to grid. So you can see here I'm snapping that thing and it's finding what we want. But let's go a bit further, and this is going to get a bit experimental. I'm going to be trying this live. Let's say that our design calls for 2 grids. I want, as the architect, I want like one building like this, which is going to have my ticketing, my amenity, and my exhibition, and then a permanent gallery over here on a slightly different grid. Actually, and let's do a third. Let's do a third grid. Okay, so there's going to be like one geometry that addresses the street on this grid, and let's, you know, put this geometry there, squished in there, and then this geometry is kind of off again. So we've got this triangular park that we're in, and these axes, and we want 3 grids to plan to. So can we implement a grid, a multi-grid system? That's what I'm going to try and do. Okay, so we are wanting to build a grid object for this complex building, series of pavilions, which incidentally, if you come down to the art gallery, is like this one. You see, this is the new art gallery, which is all these like these beautiful pavilions that sort of span over and kind of collapse down. That's the old art gallery. How good is this new Mapbox stuff? Even got these little statues. Okay, so my thought here is a couple of thoughts. So first, let's make a grid 1 layer. What we could do is just say, let's do a grid, and I'll edit the actual grid, the project grid, the global grid. And should we make our grid like more of an architectural number, like 3.6 or something, or 7.2? Let's do 7.2 planning grid. So we could do that, and there's our grid. And our users could literally just reset the grid every time they've worked on different things. So, but this is on option 1, so I'll turn this guy down. Okay, and now what we could do is literally just draw a grid like this. And I'll make let's make it look a bit more beautiful. So I will, one of our usages that we have is region, which looks like this. And if we do that, and do that, and make it like this sort of gray color, we get that. Never underestimate how effective just doing a couple of clicks is. It is crazy effective. So literally just manually build this planning grid. And the reason I'm going to do this, well, my instinct here is that if we have these squares, then our snap tool is going to work really nicely with them. But our snap tool needs squares to work against. So if I do delete that guy, now I should be able to get these dudes and copy them one time to, I'm not getting great snap there. So I'll just use base point move. Boink, and I'll snap there to there. And I'll copy again and base point move from there to there. And I should have grouped anyway. Copy again, base point move there to there. And now, sorry, a shortcut we have here is tab. So if I have these guys and I copy them, then I want to base point move them. You see base point move is highlighted there. So if I hit tab, that's going to auto-complete that. So it's going to get my base point move. Okay, cool. So here is a grid. And if I turn off the project grid, there's a grid that exists. And I'll group this thing now. And I'll call this grid 1. Okay, cool. Now we can do grid 2. So I can just grab this guy down and, well, should we test if it works first? I think that's probably not a bad idea. So let's come back to option 1. And let's draw, so let's say this is our gallery space, 14 meters. So let's say exhibition, I think was the word I used. There we go. Okay, so that's nice. And the global grid is there. Pretty cool. Okay, so it's picking up these little dudes. So I can sort of, on the planning grid, snap to pretty effectively. Now, this grid object that we've created is pretty cool, but it's not going to, well, let's see where it falls down. So we copy another one. I'm going to base point move this guy to there, and then I'm going to base point rotate him to there. Okay, so now we have an additional grid, and we now have our final grid. Okay, so same thing here. Now, unfortunately, we're not going to get to the position where we have the drag working on all the grids because the drag does work off the global grid. So we do need this sort of base point snap stuff, but not the end of the world. And if we, get used to base point move, we do want a mode where you can always have base point move on. And let's do this as large exhibition. And then we can put our back of house, like a long, thin back of house, let's say. Rectangle snap. Back of house. We can do things like this. We can crank option 1 back up. We can crank grid down. There we go, like this super faint grid. Oh, how good does exhibition look? I didn't realize the floor to floor was so large. I mean, the large format retail. Exhibition. There we go. Let's do that. Okay. And then what are we going to do? So, and sorry, as you can see here, you can see our exhibition areas are working, and we can talk with our client about whether they want this 14.4 or whether they're happy to break the grid and sort of go to this size. We can obviously lock that grid as well. But you can see we're still slightly short. So we've done something like this. So now we have a couple exhibition galleries, quite inefficient, lots of circulation space in between. That's fine. We can pop them back. And that's where the snap really works, when you align the grid. I guess what is nice, say I wanted to snap here, I could just edit the grid here. Edit grid. So if I do this, I can also edit grid. Oh, that's cool. Not quite exactly. Oh, there it comes. I know. It's why is it tilting? Stop tilting to the right. Cool. So once you have these grid objects, you can set the snap up in an appropriate way. Anyway, let's kill that. Let's make this. We use the Y key to make this large format gallery. So our large exhibition, we're very short. Okay, so we've done our dash, and I'm just going to put this as tickets here. I'm not even going to bother building the grid because we don't need it. And I'm going to add one more gallery here, even though, oh no, our exhibition area has actually shrunk. Oh yeah, sorry, because you can see my large exhibition area is too small, especially with my back of house. Even my back of house is too small. So I need a bit more. So let's move this down like this. There, and we can do some back of house here. I use that Y key to do the eyedropper and snap. So my exhibition is getting there. Looks like I'm going to use the entirety of the grid. Okay, so slightly too big. There we go. Something like that. And let's make this double story. And, or we'll do this. Like that. And again, on grid, we can go where we need. So that's slightly too big. Something like that. Okay, and from a ticketing perspective, we need to grow slightly. This is not on grid, it just is what it is. Something like that. And then we'll do some amenities. And we'll just do it like this. And make these amenities. Right, so our back of house is slightly too small. So if we do this, and this, and this, we're much closer. We got amenities, again, slightly too small. I'd say amenities don't just consist of toilets, but also consist of a cafe. Here we go. All right. So here's our museum. So what have we done? Okay, so we've built an area tracker or a program tracker. We've built a grid, a multi-grid. We've used it. We have found that there are certain reasons why you still need to edit the grid manually per building, as in Giraffe's not fully flexible enough that it will let you do snapping, etc. on multiple grids, but you do get this nice multi-grid here using polygons. We could obviously do the same thing with lines, but I quite like this checkerboard thing. All right, and we've come up with a scheme that is this building. Very interesting. Okay, so I guess the last thing I'm going to do is chuck a bit of architecture on it and call it a day. So I want some sort of curvy roofs, kind of Peter Zumthor style roofs. So I will do that. And let's add the corner radius. And we'll say they're like a 4 meter radius. And we'll say, I'll put it as a landscape, simple, and I'll override the colors to make it white. I'm just thinking like a white roof, and we'll stack them up top like that. Okay, we may add the floor to floor, might make it a bit higher. I think it's the height property. There we go. And height is over there. 1 meter. Okay, cool. And then we'll sort of do this, and I think here we're looking for this concept of this pavilion. If I just turn that up, it's not quite white, is it? It's more of a pink. There we go. Now, it's not going to win an architectural award, but it is going to be a concept. Now, I can drag a copy by holding Option, or I can draw a rectangle like this, kind of grow it, and then hold Y and use that that key, that eyedropper key shortcut. All right, and now let's see what happens here. So I think we'll do one like this. And Yeah, cool. And I think we'll do one like this. I'll just put that stack order up. Okay, groovy. All right, so there we go. We've got ourselves a museum design. It's sort of this lily pad effect, which is not quite right, but so be it. Probably the way to make it actually feel way nicer would be to override this like every now and then, pop the floor to floor up. So maybe make this guy like a 7-meter gallery. Whoop. 7 was right. 7. Y. And here I'm not really trying to demonstrate too much, apart from the fact that in the hands of a competent designer, this is going to be a very, very cool tool, and it'll be able to do a lot of things. I'm just going to configure this analytics as well. I often turn the area chart off. I don't love it. As you can see here, grid 1 is a layer that is, it's got regions of areas. So I'm just going to configure that as well. And we're going to hide grid 1. We don't want to see it. So now we're just seeing out 2. There we go. Not terrible. Not a terrible feasibility tool.